Precious Metals Exchange and accepting 3 32-ounce gold bars as a security deposit.
Well, sadly, we all know what's happening to the dollar. The dollar is going down, and it's not a pretty picture, and it's not being sustained by proper policy and proper thinking. This was an opportunity, and maybe an opportunity to show people what's happening with the dollar so that we can do something about it.
Michael Haynes, CEO of APMEX, is the mastermind who hatched this plan.
To us, cash, gold, they're basically the same asset. As we were negotiating this, we went to Mr. Trump, who I think is a very smart guy, and we presented him with some data, and you just heard him speak and say, it didn't take me very long to say, yes, I want the gold instead of the cash.
Global elites' preferred outcome. It will be a very bad thing for personal and economic freedom. It means more fiat currency, more centralization, and less freedom for the individual. The second option is to simply return to a gold as the premier international currency. Here's how it could happen. Trump might play along with the globalist schemes, but I doubt it. He's the first president who's openly and sincerely hostile toward globalism. He's denounced it repeatedly. Trump recently said, "We will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism." In my view, there's only one way Trump could fight the globalist elites and the SDR plan, which is to return the dollar to some sort of gold backing. Trump has said favorable things about gold in the past, so has some of his advisors. It wouldn't be easy. He's faced one hell of a struggle with globalists, and winning will be far from certain. No matter what, the death of the petrodollar is just like the end of dollars linked to gold. Will be very good for the dollar price of gold and gold mining stocks. When Nixon took the dollar off gold in 1971, gold skyrocketed over 23,000%. It shot from $35 per ounce to a high of $850 in 1980. Gold mining stocks did even better. Gold is still bouncing around its lows. Gold mining stocks are still very cheap. I expect returns to be at least as great as they were during the paradigm shift in the international monetary system. All this is what happens after Trump's first few months in office.
Conversations with various representatives of China, I believe that will all work out very well for everybody. China, Japan, the United States, and everybody in the region. As far as the currency devaluations, I've been complaining about that for a long time. And I believe that we will all eventually, and probably very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think, we will be all at a level playing field. Because that's the only way it's fair. That's the only way that you can fairly compete in trade and other things. And we will be on that field.
Of all of the world's reserve currencies in history, certainly since sterling went on the gold standard in the early 18th century, has been that they have a large proportion of backing by gold. And of course, in the gold standard in 1720, whenever the Bank of England went on to the gold standard, there was 100% backing, and that really lasted certainly all the way through to the 1930s. And then really, if you look at why did the dollar pick up as the world's reserve currency in 1945, it was because the United States had by far the largest reserves of gold in the world, so it made sense for the US dollar to be the world's reserve currency. So do you need 100% backing now? No, you probably don't, but would the world expect you to have a higher than average percentage holding of gold as part of your reserves? Yes, it would, and so I think that's part of the reason that China is buying. The other part, of course, is because certainly at the short end, they're probably receiving negative real interest rates on their holdings of treasuries. So actually against that, gold, actually, which holds its value as a real asset, looks like quite a good investment.
Is that why Russia's buying gold as well, then, do you think? A similar reason?
Russia will have dollar reserves because it is a large oil producer, and for the same sorts of reasons, depending on what real return you can get on your dollar, it makes sense for the Russians to also diversify some of their dollar reserves into gold. I suspect in the case of Russia there is a little bit of geopolitical niggle as well. I sense certainly from reading the papers that there is a certain irritation in the Russian government of the status that the dollar does have, and that if there was a sense that they could reduce that influence to some extent, then they might not mind seeing that. But that is purely my speculation. Just reading the runes, I think there's a slight anti-dollar feeling in the Russia.
So we have Europe, Russia, China. They all have their individual payment systems. Then we have BRICS pay. So this tells us that they're prepared and ready to come off the SWIFT system if the entire system breaks down. What they're telling us is that they're getting prepared for a complete switch away from the Federal Reserve note. And like we said, once Trump and the Patriots bring the Federal Reserve to its knees, yes, we will take it over as a nation. We will create our own currency without interest attached, but most likely it's going to be a local currency. It's not going to be a world currency. And every other country, well, most likely they're going to be using their own currencies. And I think a lot of countries are going to back their currency with gold. I believe that the United States might back the currency with gold or use it as a confidence builder. So countries around the world, they've been telegraphing this message for quite a while. And we know from Q, this is the move they're going to make. Remember, going all the way back to Q's posts, Q outlined that all of these central banks around the world, they're private Western central banks that are owned by the Rothschild, and they do believe they're above the law. We don't need a central bank that is above our laws or any country's laws. Because how do you rein them in? How do you control them? You can't. And this is the problem. They don't want to be audited. You can't tell us what to do. We're a private corporation. Think about the power of something like